Hey guys, happy Saturday. What little is left of it. It's about 7:45 now, and I'm in my house. I'm not outside because look, we live near the ocean. You wonder what we do with all the shells we find? Well, this is my little activity that I like to do. Oh, there you go. That's the front of it. It's fun. Buy these $5 lamps from a thrift store, wrap them in rope, decorate them up with shells. Kind of fun. It keeps me from doing email and the other stuff I'm supposed to do, like making videos and talking to you all. So I said that I've started doing something that I haven't done before on FL Compass Church. And I said I'm going to do a study of Romans 12. And it gave me a couple weeks ago, I related a verse. And there's also another verse I use in Romans 12, Romans 12:15. Is a verse that I use a lot for people in trouble. Let me read it to you. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I related Romans 12:18 the other day. If possible, so far as depends on you, live peaceably with all people. And as I was studying this, it's like, you know what? I need to talk about the whole book of Romans, or at least Romans chapter 12, so here goes. So last week I said that Romans is a letter, is probably what Paul would have said if he could have gone to Rome. The Roman church, which was actually a bunch of little, today we would say there would be small groups, house churches, micro churches. There's all sorts of buzzwords, but there were groups meeting in different people's homes. And there were some problems. We had Jewish churches that thought you had to keep doing all the Jewish stuff, the feasts and the festivals and the food laws and things like this. And there were non-Jewish churches, Gentiles. All a Gentile is a non-Jew. And they're like, we don't want any of this Jewish stuff, especially the circumcision thing. No. So there were some issues. And that's why Paul wrote this. And that's why a lot of church leaders, pastors, scholars, professors, justifiably so, call Romans the theology of God, theology of Jesus Christ. It's a study of God. And it really is. I mean, Martin Luther, the start of Lutheran Reformation, a Catholic Church, used Romans. That's where it started. So there's a lot of truth in what he says. But at the basis of it, it's a letter written to a group of folks. So the way the arguments go throughout much of Romans, the way the letter is written is like, hey, here's this situation, here's all these evidences and reasons, and here are these conclusions as to why we say what we say. So it's a very logical, orderly, theological writing. Until we get to Romans 12. It changes kind of a little bit. It's kind of neat. So let me give you the first couple verses. And it says Romans 1 and 2. Now this still goes back to this logic, art, or stuff. Therefore, which means he's made his case. Therefore, I exhort you, brothers and sisters, by the mercy of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, alive, holy, and pleasing to God, which is your reasonable service. Do not be conformed to this present world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may test and approve what is the will of God, what is good and well-pleasing and perfect. This is the theological part. Then it goes on into verse 3. Let me read these next couple verses. For by the grace given to me, I say to every one of you not to think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but think with sober discernment as God has distributed to each of you a measure of faith. This is kind of the start of a break in how Paul writes this letter. So he's going through all these points, point, here are the evidences, this is why I conclude and say what I say. This kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with what he's been doing, these arguments, logical arguments. But he's saying, look, just because you know this stuff, just because you think, you got a lot of knowledge and education, don't think that you're like all that. For just as in one body we have many members, and not all the members serve the same function, so we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually we are members who belong to one another. And we have different gifts according to the grace given to us. And then he goes on to talk about these gifts. If the gift is prophecy, an individual must use it in proportion to his faith. If it's service, he must serve. If it's teaching, he must teach. If it's exhortation, he must exhort. If it's contributing, he must do so with sincerity. If it's leadership, he must do so with diligence. If it's showing mercy, he must do so with cheerfulness. So basically, he lays out these arguments, and then he says, look, this is what you got to do, guys. I'm going to stop there because how do we do this? And he talks about love. But there's a really fancy word, and it's called paranesis. And it's a style of writing. I'm going to talk more about paranesis next week. At the moment, I shouldn't say at the moment, today, we look at it as either a style of writing or something like that, which it is. But it's also a whole lot more. So what we've done is Paul writes this letter, he makes all these arguments, he wraps them up, do this and don't think you're all that. And then he breaks, and he goes into paranesis. And sounds very theological and heady. Don't worry. It's interesting what he does, and it's also interesting how it was used. This is not, well, I'll save it for next week. It's not all that heady, and it is kind of interesting. All right? So that's the intro. Thanks for letting me share with you guys. I'm going to go back and finish up my lamp for the night. These are shell pieces, but I've got the perfect spot. What I need to do is find the right shell piece to put in it. All right, thanks for joining. Hey, remember, keep up with us at FL Compass Church, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And remember, we've got a new group on Facebook, Church Happy Hour. Place to ask your questions. Come check us out. Hang out for a little bit. Let me know your thoughts on what I said tonight. And I think next week, let's see if there's a discussion about paranesis. All right, have a great weekend, great Sunday, and we will see you Wednesday. Keep them questions coming.